to be honest enough, the fact remains that the people of India have always been shown a wrong picture about Kashmir. A general impression, if you go across India, is that Kashmir problem is being created by Pakistan. They are sending infiltrators, they are sending money, they are sending guns, and the people of Kashmir are just working on the behest of the government of Pakistan. So this is unfortunate that every time there's a problem in Kashmir, every time the struggle for freedom in Kashmir, gets more and more support from the public, the fingers are always pointed towards Pakistan. So I think it is important, and it was important, that the delegation was told by us that they have to stop looking at Kashmir always from a Pakistani prism. And they have to stop, looking at always at Kashmir as something which is being engineered or maneuvered by people sitting across the border. The fact is that in the last 3 months, more than 100 people have died. Children have died, youth have died, from an 8-year-old boy to a 60-year-old man. All of them have been Kashmiris. No Pakistani has died, no Indian has died. So I think it's time that at least India recognizes the dissent which is coming across in Kashmir, that the people of Kashmir are demanding their right. Yes, Pakistan is a party. Nobody can deny that fact. If tomorrow we are seeking a solution, we seek a solution through involvement of India, Pakistan, and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think it is time, and that is the reason why the Hurriyat Conference has proposed in our memorandum which we have given to them that if India wants to really move forward on the track of resolution, let them create an all-party parliamentary group in the Indian Parliament, which would be representative of all the Indian parties. Same group can be, started in the Parliament of Pakistan. Let these parliamentary groups start meeting. Let them reach out to the people of Kashmir so that a process can be initiated.
After about 100 deaths in the region and 100 days of unrest, shutdowns, crackdown, and a heavy security crackdown since June 11th, who do you think is to be blamed for the killings in the region?
Well, look, I'll tell you, it's the lack of resolution. New Delhi is there, the state government is there, the security apparatus is there. They are, of course, to be blamed for all these killings. And I would still say that there is still time left. These people have died, they've rendered sacrifices, and then look at the last 20 years, so many people have died. It's still time for them to spare the Indian nation from incurring these massive moral costs of having to kill civilians in order to hold to a land, irrespective of the will of the inhabitants or against the will of the inhabitants. And it's going to continue as long as they don't resolve it to a level where significant sections of the populations feel that it's resolved to their satisfaction. So it's the lack of resolution. And then you have these physical actors in terms of human beings, whether it's the state, Delhi, whether it's the state government, whether it's the security forces who are in front of who are the masks. But behind the mask is the main thing is the lack of resolution.
Truly. Mr. Bhatt, I just want to ask you that how appropriate do you think are the demands of separatists like Mr. Gilani has put forward 5 points, like accept Kashmir as a dispute, and he has said Armed Forces Special Powers Acts must be revoked, demilitarization must start, probe into the killings, and many others. Do you think these demands are relevant and needs some looking from New Delhi?
I said at the outset that this is a problem, and we will have to start from the problem itself. Unless you address the main problem, addressing offshoots doesn't matter much. That's one thing of it. The another part of it is the other demands that have been put forward by the separatists is for creating an atmosphere. Right now Kashmir is under crisis. Everybody is up against the establishment, up against a country. There is kind of discontent. Nobody listens to, sharer voices have to prevail, and there has to be some calm for that. The suggestions that situation should improve, and there should be some measures which can make the situation conducive for a dialogue, for an understanding, for a resolution, for reconciliation. The measures they have proposed, they are very much there. I don't think there is any dispute that the killings have taken place and there should be an inquiry into that. Who will say no? The bad laws, who are unpleasant laws, the laws which are being misused, which kill people, who will say those laws should not go? Or many other measures, confidence building measures, they have to be taken, because there is a precedent and example. From 2002 to 2006, the two Indian governments under Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh took certain measures for confidence building at subcontinental level, at regional level between the two countries, India and Pakistan, and also at the local level. Those confidence building measures worked. There was kind of a conducive atmosphere for reconciliation and dialogue, because ultimately the problem has to be solved. Both its internal dimension and external dimension will have to be addressed through dialogue and reconciliation. When everybody agrees to some starting point where from we will kickstart the process, that will be the happy day for us all.
But don't you think, Mr. Lone, that there is a need to look into these 5 points, at least one of them? India must have looked into one of them at least, so that they could have roped in the separatists to sit on a table to talk.
Yeah, I think all the CBMs, as Mr. Bhatt was talking about, are very important, so that there is a pressure within the valley for people to go for a dialogue. Because as on date, the pressure is not to go for a dialogue, because the expectations, the political expectations are that India has not delivered in the past, will not deliver in the future. So onus is on India to convince the people of Kashmir that this time we're serious, and CBM is a way out. But having said that, we also need to steer clear from confusion of the semantics. For example, one of the points is call Kashmir disputed. Now, Kashmir is a part of the composite dialogue between two sovereign countries, India and Pakistan.
Right.
I don't think you need a bigger proof than that. Why should India discuss Kashmir with Pakistan if it's not disputed? So once you start this semantic confusion, because it normally helps the state which is occupying the land. You know, once there is a confusion of semantics, confusion of nomenclature, you can go on discussing it for 20 years. And it doesn't really matter a lot. But apart from that, the other sections pertaining to phased demilitarization, pertaining to commissions to inquire how these killings took place, and a range of other things which would give relief to the common man.
But just tell me, what is that, in your opinion, that is hindering New Delhi from a revocation of Armed Forces Special Powers Act?
Arrogance and lack of leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't mean to say there is no Prime Minister there. You need leaders and statesmen to resolve disputes. And South Asia has seen a paucity of such statesmen and leaders in the last 4 or 5 decades. Conflicts are not irresolvable by nature or resolvable by nature. Leaders, statesmen who are at the helm of affairs make the difference. And we've yet to see a statesman in the entire region of South Asia who would rise somehow and make a difference and resolve this issue. The day we find him or her, I'm sure things would change.
As you said, that there is a need of leadership, like be it South Asia, be it India, or be it Kashmir. Do you think change of guard will help somehow in resuming the peace in the region?
Well, look, I'll tell you, if it's a regime change, I would say it's, if you want to change a master, it won't help. But my problem with governments, which quote unquote they say democratic governments, is that it lulls India into complacency, that we have a democratic government in Kashmir and everything is fine. If it's a regime change, it's of no use. But if there is a regime change specifically to facilitate the resolution, so that there are no complacencies, there are no delusions that we're doing well in Kashmir, and there's a time-bound resolution process, why not? I mean, so then it's fine. But changing a master with another master, the local master.
Off and on you have been saying that you were not inspired by Indian democracy, but you wanted to raise Kashmir issue in Indian Parliament.
Look, when I fought elections, I could have fought assembly elections, which is more to do with power, local administration, the municipality aspect of governance. The idea was conflict transformation, and that was that rather than using stones and guns, let us use the legitimate institutions of India to raise the same voice. Like I've been talking to you for the last 20 minutes. What have I said which has changed after fighting elections? It's the same what I used to say before fighting elections. But the problem is that in a conflict zone, you have these stigmatizations, you have these stigmas, and it's difficult to fight them. But I'm sure that with the passage of time, people will understand that one single act doesn't make a right and wrong.
My last question to both of you. What can put an end to the unrest in Kashmir? Beginning from you, Mr. Bhatt.
Unconditional dialogue, starting from change of serious administrative and political measures.
And Mr. Lone?
Well, I think they should start a dialogue. And for starting a dialogue, they should have a reference point. And in my case, the reference point is, this is what I feel, is an independent homeland. That is the majority opinion. And use that as a reference point, and then graph the deviations away from that possible acceptable to Kashmiris, and the deviations or the movements of the Indian state from its current position towards that reference point. That should be the context in which the dialogue should be held.
Mr. Bhatt, you said unconditional dialogue. I just want to ask you one thing. Do you think the onus lies more on New Delhi?
On both. We need to have a consensus. New Delhi needs to have a consensus on that. We will have to work out. And both
add one thing, that Delhi is a state, a country, recognized by United Nations. They have an army, ambassadors. Kashmir is in a state of conflict for the last 20 years. We don't have institutions. I agree with Bhatt Saab that both have to show the resilience, the perseverance, the leadership. But the onus is, at the end of the day, the larger part of the onus would be on Delhi.
Both, you mean?
Well, Kashmiris also, Pakistan also, India also. But given that Kashmir is in a sort of conflict, and if you look at the history of conflicts, you know, the places which are in conflict, the biggest casualty is the polity, the society, societal ramifications. You know, there's a depredation of society. There is a lot of problem. Still, I agree that they have to rise up to the occasion despite these drawbacks, despite these adverse conditions.
So who has the major role to play?
I think India has certainly the major role. They are the ones who have been accused of indulging in human rights violations. They are the ones who have backed out of dialogue many times. They are the ones who have broken the promises. So I think they have to deliver.
Do you accept the fact that whatever Mr. Lone is saying, is it?
Of course, there is nothing bad in that. India is a bigger country. It's a bigger player in the subcontinent itself. We have many stakeholders. They should, a big brother should show too much of compassion.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for joining me on In Focus. Apparently, from this panel of discussion, it's New Delhi now which has a greater part to play to put an end to this non-stop violence by listening to people's grievances and resolving this issue once and for all. Thank you very much for being with us on In Focus. Keep watching Press TV. See you next time. Bye-bye.